We begin with Brian Peterson's famous book, Understanding Exposure, the fourth edition, How to Shoot Great Photographs with Any Camera. So this is the ultimate beginner photography book. It basically covers the first few weeks of photography school very comfortably. It will teach you the basics. For example, it will introduce you to the exposure triangle, metering, subject isolation. You'll learn exactly what it means to manipulate shutter speed, aperture, ISO to your advantage to achieve the look that you want. It'll teach you about depth of field and how to do long exposure, light painting at night, that kind of thing. It'll teach you about the various photographic filters out there like circular polarizers and ND filters. And we'll also give you an introduction to flash photography, so lighting your subjects with something other than natural light. So if you're just going to choose one beginner book, this is the one. If you're just starting out in photography, this is the perfect book. Next up, once you've mastered the basics, probably the best book for amateur photographers. This is called Mastering Composition by Richard Garvey Williams. So this is a book that will explain in very clear terms and with concrete examples how to achieve compositionally pleasing or visually pleasing images. Where to place your subjects in the frame, what is the rule of thirds, what's the golden ratio, how do you achieve subject isolation, how to successfully use various aspect ratios out there, how to use leading lines and negative space to achieve the look and feel that you like from an image. So if you're a designer or an artist, I don't think any of this will be really new to you, but I think this is a great book if you're not just supernaturally gifted at art and design. Like, for example, I had to learn all this stuff from scratch. This will really teach you how to make your images stand out and take them to the next level. Now getting more advanced, definitely for the intermediate photographer, we have Light, Science, and Magic. It's an introduction to photographic lighting, but that is an understatement. The book assumes that you want to progress beyond natural light photography. Okay, your photography will really only improve once you start understanding light, its manipulation, its quality, and things like that. Photography, after all, is literally painting or drawing with light. That's what photo and graph mean. This book will teach you the best way to light just about anything. It will teach you not just about the amount of light necessary, but the quality of light, direction of the light, the angle, the reflections, the difference between key and fill lights, how to use modifiers successfully. If all of this stuff is a mystery to you, this is the one-stop shop for understanding how to use artificial lighting in your photography. And once you start understanding artificial lighting, you can then bring some of those principles back and actually improve your natural light work as well. Next up, we have 50 Portraits by Gregory Heisler. Now, this is a tour de force. This is a masterclass in portraits from one of the most experienced practitioners of the craft. So Gregory Heisler has shot Michael Phelps, Bruce Springsteen, Hillary Clinton, all sorts of famous politicians, celebrities, athletes in this book. And for each of the pictures, there is a backstory. He goes over the entire creative process, the thinking and technique for each shoot. It's a true behind-the-scenes look that doesn't just focus on the technique, but also the thinking of how to customize the shoot for each particular person. How you would change the setting, how you shoot quickly and effectively, because you're taking pictures of people that really don't have that much time. Next up, we have probably my favorite photography book of all time, Magnum Contact Sheets. For all photographers out there who are even remotely interested in photojournalism, documentary photography, street photography, that kind of thing, the Magnum Contact Sheets is exactly what it is. It's 139 contact sheets from 69 Magnum photographers. So these are some of the best photographers in the world. Basically, a contact sheet is just this quick one-page print you make from your entire roll of film. We can quickly preview all the different shots and then select the ones that you want to take a look at more closely. Or you would send a contact sheet to an editor and they would go back and get back to you with the shots that they want for the magazine. And you would also debate about which one we're going to choose for the cover image and whatnot. So it's really fascinating because you rarely get to see the process behind the work of these famous photographers. Usually you only see the final shot. But with the Magnum Contact Sheets, you can see all the shots they took on that day, okay, of the same person. You can see how many shots they typically take. maybe shoot one slightly overexposed, slightly underexposed, because you're not going to get a second chance with the subject in the scene. Some of the world's most famous photos are in this book, and it's a really sizable book. 524 pages. You're definitely getting value for your money here. Next up, we have Richard Avedon, photographs from 1946 to 2004. Richard Avedon was one of the most famous and influential photographers of all time. This book features 125 of his greatest hits, from fashion to reportage. Avedon has been an inspiration to many, including some contemporary portrait photographers. To give you a sense of roughly what we're dealing with, it's a mix of fashion photography, but also pictures of regular people that he took in the American West in one of his most famous series. Okay, so Richard Avedon is a master, obviously not just of technique and composition and all that, but of interacting with the subject and pressing the shutter button at exactly the right time. So definitely someone to study. Moving on, we have Vivian Maier, street photographer. I'm sure you knew or expected that this was coming. Vivian Maier was a professional nanny in New York City who took 100,000 photos and never showed them to anyone. And they were really only discovered after she passed away, unfortunately. And so this is actually some of the best street photography from America and from around the world where Vivian had a chance to travel. Remember, she had no training, no support. This was entirely a solo effort, and she came back with work that is just outstanding and I believe is featured in many galleries today. And this book is a curated collection of some of her best photos. This is Ansel Adams' 400 photographs. Most photographers, I think in a good year, struggle to get 2 or 3 amazing shots that they're proud of. Ansel Adams, over his lifetime, accumulated hundreds. Probably the name most synonymous with photography. He was instrumental in redefining landscape photography, large format photography in the Yosemite and High Sierra, and also his work in the national parks. These are some of his best images, and you can have them all in one book. So the book is actually quite nice. I think especially for landscape photography, it definitely makes sense to buy a photo book, because it's very different to consume this kind of grandiose, epic photography on a phone or computer screen versus looking at an actual print. I think you would appreciate his work even more once you see it in print. Next up, we've got Henri Cartier-Bresson, The Modern Century. It's debatable about which book of his or which collection of his is the best. Bresson obviously was a highly influential photographer, famously stuck to using the 50mm focal length because he believed it to be the most natural. And said anything wider, like 35mm, is shouting. It's definitely one of my favorite photographers. I've actually seen his photos in a gallery in Paris, so I definitely seek out any opportunity to see large prints of this man's work. Some of the best shots from not only Europe, but also America and around the world, curated and presented to you in one book. Definitely one of the treasures of photography. Finally, last but not least, we have one of my favorite photographers of all time, Sebastião Salgado. He is a Brazilian photographer who actually started as an economist for the World Bank. And what he does is he embarks on these multi-year journeys where he really hammers out a particular theme. And Genesis is one of his major works. Genesis was an 8-year project where Salgado sought out pristine, untouched locations from all around the world. In other words, places where animals and nature are least affected by people. So the one downside to this book is I really don't like it when they do this. When they have one photo split along the middle here. So I think that kind of ruins it for me. I was lucky enough to see a gallery of Salgado's work in New York City where you can see very large prints, a few feet across. But I mean, these are just world-class images. Salgado was famous for being a master of black and white photography. And for a long time, he was shooting all his work in film. He transitioned to digital, but it wasn't that long ago. So again, if you have the chance to see this man's work in person at a gallery somewhere, I highly recommend you do it. All in all, I think books are underrated. We're in a society that's just looking for the next thing to consume on Netflix or YouTube, but so much work goes into each book, sometimes a lifetime of work from a photographer, long time spent editing, culling, captioning all the photos, making sure it's optimized to be just right on print. These are not the 10 best photography books out there. There are dozens of amazing photography books. I just wanted to point out 10 of my personal favorites. Obviously some that were left out and I hope to cover in a future video. Anyway, If you have favorite photography books of your own, let us know in the comment section. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.